Hey, this is Brad Dyke saying hi to everybody there. And today, we're not going to quite talk about technology in the sense of computer systems, but we're going to talk about technology about some of your home utility devices. And in this particular video, we're going to talk about your hot water tank. Now, a hot water tank principally is designed in such a way to take in water from the upper valve water intake here and then to the hot water output up at the top. But down here in the hot water here is an access point, a ground zero point, the reservoir itself, and a common problem that happens with water heaters that cost you dearly when it comes to how long you can keep it. So what I'm referring to on that front is, you can have a hot water heater that would last you, 7 to 8 years, or you can have them last longer. Or you can have them go as quickly as 4 or 5 years. So in this case, I usually lose a water heater somewhere between year 7 and year 10 because of the lime sulfate sediment buildup in the water of Ohio, where I live. The key detail here is that understanding that when you're working with water heaters, I should say, that you're working in such a way that you can do some additional steps or maintenance steps to help you get that water heater more of a life cycle to it. Now, what is the problem with water heaters and sediment? Well, there are a couple of problems with them. Number one, you have what is known as condensation buildup, and you have to look down here and you can see what would appear to be rust. So in this case, we are actually looking at a clean environment. We want it to be water free, but when you start to discover water, you have to worry a little bit about that. Now here, this is a catch pan designed to help track the water and push it over to the drain valve here. This guy right here is a leach valve, or basically a valve at the bottom of the tank designed to allow you to do something we're going to do here in just a minute. And up at the very top, we have the blow-off valve, which is a pressurized valve that will blow. When it blows, it will push all the water pressure down into the pan down here, which will eventually go down my drain. So what's the key thing we're going to do about today is basically how do we deal with sediment buildup. Sediment buildup ruins the tank. It can increase the capacity for a tank to rust sooner than later. And with ionization is basically where ionized water can cause additional sediment buildup versus non-sediment buildup pass-through. And so how do you know that? Well, if you look at your pipes, you will see right down here this white chalkiness, and there is some accumulation here, but it's principally wherever the water sits or accumulates, the sediment inside the water is left behind once it evaporates. That's the sediment we're talking about. This stuff builds up inside your water heater, and a lot of it. This is basically about a 70-pound tank when you're transporting it from the store to home, but by the time that you put it through its paces and you never drain it, you end up getting a problem of it weighing 250 pounds. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you how you're going to be able to help keep as much of that sediment out of your system as long as you can, but eventually, due to the nature of sediment, it usually does cost you your water heater. If you're fortunate enough and not have a great deal of sediment in your water heaters can last a really long time. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and do this in such a way so that we can get you to see how easy it is to get the sediment out of your tank, out through the valve, and out through the system so that it's basically removed from the house. So what do we need first? The first thing we need to do is to go to our basement toolkit. If you have one, great. If you don't, then go upstairs to your garage and get your toolkit out. And then here I keep a toolkit in my basement because it's just so much easier to just have the tools down here when I need them. And as you can see here, I have a standard flathead screwdriver. That is basically all you need. So the next thing you do is you'll take your screwdriver, and you're going to first put it into the threading hole. You might actually have a handle on this instead of a threading hole. Either way, the important thing is that you start off slowly first. And if you watch this clear hose, and just as a piece of advice, go to Lowe's or Harbor Freight or one of your hardware stores, and you will get yourself a nozzle for a hose. I recommend that people get a clear tube. The reason why I recommend a clear tube is because it shows how what's flowing through, and it tells you when you've gotten a lot of your sediment pushed through the system. Now, one mistake that people make is they think that maybe these are bubbles they see that come out of the hot water heater. Well, first things to understand is that this is a closed loop system. In other words, there's no air in here, none whatsoever. If there was air in here, you would have the spurting and the spritting and the constant spitting of water coming out of your faucet. So there's no water bubbles, no foam, anything like that. So when you see through this clear hose, which I have here, whiteness traveling through in the water, that's basically dirt. That kind of dirt down there that you see in the pan. So let's get this going. So we're going to put this in. I usually start off first slow. Did you see that? It's kind of rusty looking. Yeah, it's pretty disgusting. This is your bath water, by the way, and everything else. But as you start to increase the flow, you won't see the sediment so well until you clear the air bubbles out of your hose. So do that. Okay, so there you go. Now you just have rushing water, and you're going to open it up some, and it's basically pushing sediment buildup in the bottom of your water heater, and you'll want to vent all of your water. Now you see that? It just shot by real quick, and you'll see more of it as it does this. That's reddish color, by the way. Not clear water, but reddish color. Let me tighten that up a little bit. So as you can see, it's still kind of reddish, but it is flowing out. Now while that's happening, you look down there, there's a little bit of dripping going on, and that will eventually turn into this white, powdery, dried area, which is the sediment we're talking about. And again, you can still see some stuff traveling through. That's just dirt. Very fine sediment that gets through the water system and makes it all the way to your house. Now, what I do next is, and I'm going to go ahead and taper this off for a second. You can see, I'm going to let that settle for a second. Now, something else about sediment buildups inside hot water tanks is because since it's basically airless, there are no bubbles, there's no massing, no pushing, just basic pressure effect. So sometimes I've learned that if I give it a few minutes, more sediment will move from the middle of the tank down to the bottom of the tank because of the displacement coming from the bottom. You see, the key thing about these hot water tanks is those two lines up there, the left and the right line. One is the hot that goes out into the house, and one is the cold. So what it does is it loops water in here, settles in here about this level, and it convects and it heats from the bottom, way down there from the heating coil, which is running right now in this particular gas furnace heating unit. the water is then convected up and the heat wants to go up again. This is what causes what's called the convection of dirt in the middle. So when you're down the bottom of the tank and you're emptying the tank, you're clearing the bottom of the tank, you give it a few minutes to let the midsection kind of drift down to the bottom section. It'll be a finer, whiter kind of dirt, but it's a lighter sediment that hasn't quite accumulated as easily as that reddish material you saw at the bottom when we just started to do this. So stand by for just a second. And let's give it a minute. Okay, we're going to start this up again. Now if you notice, I'm looking at the flow of water. See how it's red again? Kind of like a reddish brown. So let's open it up. And there it is again. See it moving? Okay, so what we've done now is I've let it run for about 10 minutes, and I really want to try to get as much of this out as possible. And the way you know that your line is no longer really having a lot of sediment in it is when you don't see any more passing white specks flying through the water, or cloudy water, milky water is what I like to refer to it as. So in this case, I have run it for roughly about 8 minutes, and I started realizing that I'm not seeing any more blobs of sediment going through the hose, so I decided to turn it off. Now, as a tip, and understand that you don't have to open up your channel section here like I did. You can just leave that part closed and just not worry about that component per se. And sometimes it can be a little bit of a pain to put back on. But you can, a lot of people will do that. I do that just to check to see if there's moisture in the bottom, because that means you have condensation on the outside of the tank and it's dripping down, and that can cause the tank to rupture from the outside in versus the inside out. It does happen. But principally, the goal is just to keep the dirt out of your tank as much as possible so it doesn't eventually clog it. And that you'll know that because that when you're working with, how quickly does it take to get hot water? Why does it kind of go quickly? It didn't last as long as it used to. Your 20-minute showers turn into 10-minute showers, and you got to remember the amount of hot water that you pull from your tank at 120 degrees or 110 degrees, depending where you set your value at. You are putting yourself in a place where you are you're siphoning that super hot water off, mixing it with cold water to give you the temperature you want. It doesn't take long to drain a tank, usually about 8 minutes or so, 8 to 10 minutes of all of its hot water content, and then you just have cold water, and now you've got to heat that water back up. Now, let's say, for instance, somebody decides that they're going to take a shower while you're draining the tank, or you've got a dishwasher running. In other words, you've got some siphoning of the hot water running at the time, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The key thing is that you have to remember is that hot water is at the top of the tank and the cooler part of the water is at the bottom. And so when you start to feel cool water, which was once hot, it has no effect on the actual drainage process that I just did. It just happens to make things happen faster. Now, the other cool effect of it that it also does do is it causes more stimulation in the inside the tank, and that cycling effect will help push that sediment more. Think of it like a drifting object inside water. The closer it gets to a drain, it will get caught in that current and right out the bottom it goes. This is why you have to drain the tank and keep pushing the water through it so that you can get the sediment low enough so that it can be sucked out. Well, this is just a cool little 15-20 minute little blurb here of how to save your home utilities and appliances that you have. This is something that people take for granted. They just think they put it in, they have somebody install it, and they will walk away from it. And then it's 5 or 6 years, they're like, why do I have to replace this yet again? And the reason why is because you didn't take the time to read the manual to understand that there are maintenance cycles that you need to do through the life of the hot water tank. And if you just do a couple of these steps, you can really make the life of your appliance last a lot longer. And that's what I'm basically showing you here. Other videos are coming, of course, as I promised, but I thought this was a cool little thing. I do these every once in a while because sometimes you just need to do it. Well, this is Brad Dyke saying goodbye, and God bless, and I hope you guys have a great week.